The second section of Unit 4 concerns the lymphatic system and immunity. We're going to look at organs, tissues, and cells of the immune system. The immune system is a collection of biological structures which protect the body from disease and have the ability to distinguish bacteria, virus, and parasites from our own healthy tissue. Our immunity hopefully can destroy cells that are infected with viruses or cells that are becoming cancerous. How can we fight disease? How can we ever win in this sea of pathogens? I'm going to post this, I think, very entertaining NPR video at the bottom of this PowerPoint. Immunity can be divided into two classifications. There's innate immunity. This is non-specific. This includes physical or chemical barriers to infection. This is our first line of defense, and it's very generalized. It's not targeted to any particular type of pathogen. Adaptive immunity, this is specialized immunity. This mobilizes protective cells. It involves chemical defenses. It detects, deflects, or destroys pathogens. This slide is kind of summarizing parts of the innate and adaptive immune system. We will go through not all of these, but some of these. You can see physical barriers such as your skin, your hair, your cilia, mucous membranes, mucus and chemical secretions. Even digestive enzymes in your mouth can destroy pathogen. Pathogens are very sensitive to pH, so your stomach acid can destroy pathogens. There are some very general internal defenses we'll discuss, and then we will discuss different types and forms of adaptive immunity. So our body has external and chemical barriers that are intended to fight off infection. Our skin, that is our outer protective barrier. Our skin releases sweat, which has antimicrobial agents. We have mucous membranes that act as a barrier. That's in our respiratory, digestive, reproductive, urinary tracts. Our oil glands secrete chemicals that can weaken or kill bacteria that's found on our skin. Our tears contain specific or generalized types of enzymes called lysozymes that can kill bacteria. Even your earwax contains some antimicrobial peptides. So we have all these external protective barriers that help prevent pathogens from taking a foothold in our body. Our upper respiratory tract, the cells have cilia, which we discussed in, I'm trying to think, Unit 2, parts of the cell. So cilia are kind of, I always think of like paintbrush-like extensions off the top of the cell that can sweep mucus. Okay, dust particles, debris, bacteria can be trapped in mucus and then swept, kind of body surfed out of our airways. Okay, we mentioned that our stomach is very acidic. So a lot of, like if you think of your like upper nose, right? If there's any bacteria there, a lot of it actually drops down your throat, not that this is noticeable, and then killed by the very acidic condition that's found in your stomach. We have a lot of good bacteria. These are resident bacteria. They're found in our intestines, they're found in our vagina, they're found in other areas that help prevent pathogens from multiplying. There is a lot of resident bacteria found on our skin. Okay, so just think of surgeons, right? They're going to go perform an operation. they scrub their skin, they still wear gloves. It's impossible to eliminate all the resin bacteria from all the little nooks and crannies and crypts that are found on your skin. And you don't want to. You can over hand sanitize your hands, right? If excessive use of hand sanitizers, particularly in the winter, can cause little cracks in your skin that actually make you more susceptible to infection. So washing your hands with warm water and soap is the most effective way of preventing the transmission of disease, right? But these protective bacteria help prevent pathogens excuse me, from taking a foothold, from colonizing the area. They're found in your mouth, they're found in your throat. We have a variety of internal defenses. We have monocytes that circulate the bloodstream. When they become activated, they're called macrophages. Macrophages means big eater. They are able to engulf bacteria. There are also chemical messengers called cytokinins, and these can generate an immune response. Okay, for example, inflammation. Inflammation is a localized response, right, to pathogens, or we'll get to this later on, it could be to allergens if you have allergies, and this causes swelling, redness, may cause pain, but this is an immune response that increases blood flow to the area so that white blood cells can more easily approach where this infection is. It attracts white blood cells, and neutrophils also engulf pathogens. Neutrophils are usually the first white blood cell to arrive. However, they do, unlike macrophages, they do die after use. And that's how pus is formed. Sorry to be gross. Right. This is showing like an injury on the skin that has allowed bacteria to enter into the body, and so you have these cytokinins, these chemical messengers that are attracting white blood cells. And the white blood cells that you see there are the neutrophils, kind of like the first responders. This slide's just showing a variety of different types of cells involved in innate immune responses. We're not going to go over all of these. We mentioned the monocyte, which can be converted into the macrophage, the big eaters. We mentioned the neutrophils that are the first responders. Adaptive immunity, this is immunity that is triggered by coming in contact with a pathogen. Okay, it can be an antigen, that's just your unique surface marker. It can be enabled by vaccination, and this involves T cells and B cells. So T cells and B cells are involved in adaptive or acquired immunity. This is showing a T cell or T lymphocyte. This slide is showing a cytotoxic T cell. These cytotoxic T cells will target cancer cells or virally infected cells and cause them to undergo apoptosis. Apoptosis, what we mentioned previously, and our other unit is like cell suicide. So the cell is becoming cancerous or it's virally infected, right? Hopefully the cytotoxic T cells can target it and cause its destruction. B cells mature in your bone marrow, but the easiest way to remember the difference between B cells and T cells is B cells produce antibodies. Each B cell is specific to one antigen. An antigen is any unique surface marker that, for instance, is found on the surface of a pathogen. It can also be an antigen that's found on a red blood cell if somebody receives, improper blood transfusion, right? It'll cause an antigen-antibody reaction. The B cells mark these pathogens or these antigens for destruction. We're not going to go into all the terminology that's shown on this slide, but you can see in A, talking about allergies, that's what's starting with me today, so I apologize. You see a virus that's being targeted by antibodies. You also see a diphtheria toxin. So if you received your DPT vaccination as a child, you have antibodies to a diphtheria toxin. And so the antibodies are targeting either the virus or the toxin for destruction. So these tagged pathogens are then consumed by either a macrophage, right, or a neutrophil, and then that destroys the pathogen. T cells are called T cells because they mature in the thymus, and they help to protect against cancer and viruses. Cytotoxic T cells hopefully kill all virally infected and cancer cells, and T cells are destroyed by triggering apoptosis. Helper T cells coordinate immune response. They're referred to as the generals of the immune system. They can call for active cytotoxic T cells. They can call for B cells when necessary. Helper T cells are the type of cell that's attacked by the HIV virus. Lymph is watery fluid that bathes your tissues and organs. You have lymph vessels, lymph nodes. Lymph also contains protective white blood cells. Structures of the lymphatic system consist of these lymph vessels that can pick up this excess fluid. It's then strained by your lymph nodes. There are lymph ducts where this kind of strained and purified fluid can go back into your circulatory system. Organs of lymphatic system consist of your tonsils, your adenoids, which are really your pharyngeal tonsils. So adenoids are really a type of tonsils. Your tonsils, they're your palatine tonsils. They're in the back of your throat. Your thymus, your spleen, bone marrow. So this is showing these lymph vessels, and they pick up this clear fluid called lymph. It passes through the nodes that help to filter the fluid. These nodes are filled with lymphocytes that purge infecting cells. If you've ever had swollen glands, sometimes you get this in your neck, it can be your armpit or your groin. That's where your lymphatic vessels have become so filled with bacteria that they become swollen. This is what occurs in tonsillitis. So if your tonsils are swollen, that means you had some type of respiratory infection, like it just could be a cold or a cough, but has caused your tonsils to become swollen because they're so engorged with bacteria. A key component of immunity is that the ability for you to recognize cells that are part of your body, which are self, from things that are foreign, which are non-self. Each foreign cell, foreign protein, foreign DNA has its own unique identity. And you need to be able to recognize these substances as foreign. So all the cells in your body, all pathogens, other substances, have unique markers known as antigens. So you have antigens on your own cells that mark your cells as you, and you have foreign antigens. If they're detected, they are not yours. Your immune system should be able to attack and destroy any foreign antigen, or in this case we're talking about. Our immunity usually lasts for some time. If you get the measles and recover or get a measles vaccination, you usually don't get it again. And this is due to the B cells and T cells. Again, B cells produce antibodies. These are immunoglobulin proteins. We saw in the kind of the graphic representation that they combine or target specific antigens. And this forms an antigen-antibody reaction. Okay, many produce these complexes that then target this antigen for destruction by either a macrophage or a neutrophil. A key thing about antibodies, so this is showing kind of representation of a B cell's plasma membrane, is that antibodies are specific to one antigen. So this picture is showing like say these are all different types of antigens. Only that one specific type, okay, can be targeted by the antibody. It has to specifically fit into the antibody's antigen binding site. It's kind of like a key and a lock, right? If the antigen binding site's a lock, there's only one key that's going to be able to fit this lock. Okay, we've already discussed the T cells, the cytotoxic T cells. These can affect virally infected cells. The helper T cells remember, these are like the generals of the immune system. They are attacked by HIV virus. And what this does is AIDS patients, right? So you don't, in theory, die of being infected by the virus. You die because you have a very decreased number of these generals of the immune system. And then that makes you very susceptible to certain types of cancers and even infections that are not seen in healthy individuals. We'll kind of get to this a little bit later on. So if somebody receives a transplant, for instance, someone needs they have kidney disease, they need to receive a kidney transplant, there's always the case of tissue rejection. The best donor organs contain the same MHC proteins. These are specific antigens found on the surface of these organs. So people that receive a transplanted organ receive immunosuppressant drugs. And what this does is it kind of inhibits the response of the T cells. Okay, so that's good that your organ, is not rejected, but suppressing the response of T cells can make that individual more susceptible to contracting and other types of infections. This is often said that a person is immunosuppressed. If you're immunosuppressed, you're more likely to contract other types of infections. Right, so you're downplaying the general, so the organ's not rejected. Plus side, negative side, you may potentially contract other types of infections. Right, so what vaccine or immunization does is vaccines are substances that usually don't cause the illness. We'll go into it. There's a few cases where vaccinations can, but cause the immune system to have a response. Vaccinations include pathogens or pathogenic products. It could be like a part of a pathogen's toxin that have been treated so they are not virulent or not disease causing. There are a variety of different mechanisms that a vaccine can use to enable immunity. The vaccine may consist of a killed bacteria or virus. This is what is used for flu, cholera, bubonic plague, hepatitis A vaccines. The organism may be live but weakened. So this is what is involved in yellow fever. Right, I have to say them in this order: measles, mumps, rubella. Right, your MMR vaccine. Polio, the OPV. You may receive a part of the toxin or a substance resembling the toxin. This is used for tetanus and diphtheria. The HPV vaccine, the vaccine for human papillomavirus, consists of a fragment of the virus. If we look at the COVID-19 vaccines, the J&J vaccine uses a disabled adenovirus. So this is a virus that has all its disease-causing properties have been eliminated, and it carries the genes for the spike protein specific to COVID-19. The Moderna and Pfizer vaccinations are mRNA virus, and the mRNA codes for this spike protein. Okay, and I know a lot of people, when these vaccinations came out, and I'm sure the discussions are still ongoing, they're like, mRNA, like that's new, that's not proven. mRNA vaccinations or work on this area have been conducted over the last 30 years, and there were already clinical trials using mRNA vaccines for some other not very prevalent diseases. So it's really that it's not new, it's the largest use of this technology. First initial large use of this technology. So the way the viral vector vaccine works, coronavirus, like the one that causes COVID-19, are named for their crown-like spikes on their surface, the spike proteins. The spike proteins are ideal targets for vaccines. Okay, viral vector, you're just using a harmless version of a different virus to deliver this information to your cells. The vaccine teaches your body how to make the spike proteins. If you are exposed to the real virus, you then recognize these spike proteins and fight it off. So this would be the J&J vaccine. The way the mRNA vaccine works. Okay, again, this discussed the spike proteins. mRNA is the genetic material that tells your body how to make proteins. So, we covered this in Unit 3. Okay, so it's mRNA that's wrapped in a coating that makes it easy to deliver. It teaches your cells how to make some copies of the spike protein. If you're exposed to the real virus later, it will recognize it and fight it off. This slide showing polio cases in the U.S. The last polio case was detected in the United States in 1979. Vaccination started in 1954, a large clinical trial that was conducted at the University of Pittsburgh. And then vaccination, general population began in 1955. United States switched to the Sabin OPV, which is a live attenuated virus. This virus is shed as in the feces, which polio initially infects the digestive system before passing to the nervous system. This also helps to confirm immunity in the population. Okay, in the United States, we switched back to IPV in the year 2000. The OPV is still being used to hopefully eradicate the last few cases of polio worldwide. The OPV has an advantage that it's an oral, right? That it's an oral vaccination. Just a few drops are placed on an individual's tongue. It doesn't require sterile syringes and vials. So it's much easier to transport and administer. So active immunity is promoted by immunization. The primary response your body has, it's its first response to the antigen. Receiving a booster dose of a vaccine induces a secondary response. The secondary response makes your body able to produce antibodies much more quickly. Active immunity depends on the presence of memory B cells and memory T cells. Active immunity is usually long-lasting, and depending on the type of disease, a booster may be required after several years. So particularly if you get some type of a puncture wound and you go to the doctor, they're going to ask you, when's the last time you had a tetanus booster? So a tetanus booster is one thing that's required about every 10 years to maintain active immunity. Passive immunity is where antibodies can be extracted from one individual and given to a patient. And this is temporary. You're not receiving the memory cells, you're just receiving the antibodies, which will target the antigens for destruction by either the macrophages or the neutrophils. This occurs in newborns. They receive antibodies from their mothers. These antibodies can cross the placenta during embryonic development. These antibodies can be passed through breast milk through breastfeeding. However, keep in mind that these antibodies are temporary and only last for a few months. This type of procedure has been used to treat Ebola patients as well as patients suffering from COVID-19. Oh, my least favorite topic. Allergies. Allergies is when an individual has a hypersensitivity to normal environmental substances, right? So an allergen, this is just the unique surface marker on the substance that is causing an allergy. So you can be allergic to, I think I'm allergic to all of these. Or you can be allergic to pollen from different types of trees or plants. You can be allergic to different types of food. You can be allergic to animal hair. For instance, you can be allergic to dogs or cats. Huge wide variety of allergies. And what triggers the reaction is you have, initially way back we looked at a slide with different types of white blood cells. You have mast cells, and mast cells release histamine. And histamine causes vasodilation, right? An expansion in the size of your blood vessels to help deliver white blood cells to that area to help fight off this. It's almost like a fake infection because it's a normal environmental substance. Allergies can be very mild, right? They can cause just sneezing, itching, watery eyes. Allergies, and this seems particular to food allergies, can be very severe where they cause constriction of the airways. When these blood vessels dilate, right? If this is a very, crazy, rapid response, dilated blood vessels can drop your blood pressure. And if it drops extremely low, this is what's called anaphylaxis. All right, so people that undergo anaphylaxis, right, you inject your EpiPen, and epinephrine is a vasoconstrictor. So that helps to elevate your blood pressure. Don't like allergies. So this is showing someone that's allergic to ragweed. Here's a B cell. We don't go into all the different categories of antibodies. But you have antibodies that are produced, right, attached to the mast cell. The mast cell is going to release chemicals such as histamine that elicit an allergic reaction. Autoimmunity. This is where these are disorders that cause a hypersensitivity to self-antigens, right? So antibodies start to attach, or I say attack, self-components. An example of this is systemic lupus, and this can affect an individual's heart, joints, lungs, skin, kidneys, central nervous system, and causes tissue damage. This is found prevalently in middle-aged women, but it can affect other individuals. Graves' disease is another autoimmune disorder that targets the thyroid gland. Rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease that targets your joints. So there is a variety of these different diseases that are really triggered by your own immune system. Okay, so on kind of the other extreme, an individual can suffer from immunodeficiency. So that's where you have a failure to respond to pathogens, or an insufficiency or a delay, and immunodeficiency can allow pathogens or even like tumor cells, right, to gain a foothold. There are a variety of causes of immunodeficiency. It can be caused by pathogens, as we mentioned, like HIV, targets the T cells or the general immune system, cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus infections. It can be induced by chemical exposure. People undergoing chemotherapy often have a reduced number of white blood cells, right? So they're immunodeficient. Chemicals such as PCBs or dioxin. There's also a genetically inherited form of immunodeficiency. This is known as SCID, severe combined immune deficiency, where an individual has a lack of T cells and B cells. This is portrayed in two movies, one in 1976 called The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, starring John Travolta. There was a remake starring Jake Gyllenhaal called Bubble Boy. Malnutrition and extreme stress can also cause immunodeficiency. So if you find yourself in a situation, you're very stressed out about something, maybe you're not eating right, this will make you more likely to become ill. AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, is a virus which lives and destroys the number of helper T cells. As your T cell number decreases, it makes the patient less likely to be able to fight off viruses, fungi, bacteria that a normal person could fight off every day. It also makes the individual more likely to suffer from particular types of cancers. This is showing HIV infection, and as the virus replicates, it's then released from the lymphocyte to go affect other cells, other T lymphocytes. HIV transmission, it's transmitted through sexual contact with an affected individual, through either vaginal, rectal intercourse, or oral genital contact. It can also be transmitted by needle sharing among IV drug users, and it also can be transmitted to babies that are born in an HIV-infected woman. There are currently about 1.2 million people in the United States that are living with HIV infected, and about 13% do not even realize they are infected. This slide just shows ways of preventing HIV infection, right? Abstaining from sexual intercourse, right? Or having a long-term monogamous relationship with a person who is free of HIV, being aware having relations with an intravenous drug user is a risky behavior. Anal rectal intercourse can cause HIV transmission to occur more readily because the lining of the rectum is very thin. Using condoms can help protect the spread of HIV through either vaginal or rectal intercourse. And oral sex is also a means of transmission. And I'm not saying avoid any of these activities, but just understand your individual risk. The vaccine debate. This is typically geared toward children and the development of autism. Vaccines do or may have side effects. They may cause fever, soreness at the site of injection, aches, nausea, allergy. I know after my COVID vaccines, I was just a little sore, a little tired. I received the Shingrix vaccine. I think I hit every side effect potentially listed on the television commercials. For instance, with the polio vaccine, using attenuated vaccine, there were a few cases of the disease. Fortunately, there are some children that started to show symptoms of autism after receiving their measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. Some of this can be contributed to this is a time where autism is often detected. Some of these children were sick at the time they received the shot. Some of these children had underlying metabolic disorders that were not detected at the time of vaccination. Andrew Wakefield in 1998 produced a study showing a link between the MMR vaccine and autism. This study was then found to be fraudulent, that there is no link that exists. This paper has been retracted. Wakefield lost his medical license. It was just an elaborate fraud. Unfortunately, this has really done long-lasting damage to public health, where there are a lot of individuals that believe that it is wrong to vaccinate your children. This is just showing recommended vaccination recommendations, and sometimes there is an issue with children that say they're ill at the time that they need to receive a vaccine, and so they have to have like a catch-up schedule which requires them to get multiple vaccinations in one day. But about 3 million children die every year, right, in the undeveloped world from diseases that are entirely prevented. And unfortunately, we've had some children die of diseases in the United States that are prevented because they were not vaccinated. Worldwide, there are about 30 million infants that don't have access to basic immunization care. One child can be fully immunized for about $17. Here's some current vaccinations. Malaria vaccine is currently available. There was a Lyme disease vaccine. There's kind of a lack of interest. It did have some severe side effects that actually was discontinued. Ebola, Zika, HIV, still under works. COVID-19, luckily, is now done. There are some vaccines that exist but are not given to the general population. We still have samples of smallpox and vaccinations of smallpox. However, this disease has been eradicated worldwide, so it's not necessary to immunize individuals against smallpox. Anthrax vaccination would potentially be useful if our military was involved in some conflict where perhaps this would be used as a biological agent.